Hey, free timers. I firmly believe that every entrepreneur should have a virtual assistant. Why? Because your VA is the one person who can help you build the life you want. In this episode, we'll show you how to turn a VA into a true partner, someone who doubles your capacity and frees you up for work only you can do. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Time Freedom Podcast, where you can learn how to rethink your work and your money to create a life you love right now. Join us for insights to help you find meaningful freedom so you can choose how and when and with whom you work for as long as you want. Here are your hosts, me, Brian Herriot, and Kirby Denison. Hello, and welcome to episode 11 of the Time Freedom Podcast. Our topic today is called Your VA is Your Partner. And this is a perfect follow-up episode to our discussion last week that we had around seasonal schedules. One of the key ways in which you can have a seasonal schedule is to leverage your team. And even if you're a solopreneur, an independent contractor, I believe that every single person should have some sort of assistant, virtual assistant, whatever assistant you want to call it, because this is your first kind of lead into breaking into the seasonal schedule. And so we have resident expert here in Kirby Denison, the owner of Kirby & Co. She's a fractional COO and provides VA services. And she's going to tell us more about her story and some other things that you should all be thinking about when you are considering a VA, which you should be considering. So Kirby, why don't you tell us a little bit about this and for our audience?
Yes, of course. First, I want to introduce you, Brian. He is our time freedom expert and kind of how got us all here. So, first, we're going to talk about why hiring them, what can they actually do for you, the benefits of having them do some of this work for you. And then, I think the big key question so many of us kind of think about is when do we know that it's the right time to hire that VA and go out and take the leap of faith that you're gonna have some support there. And so first I'll share a little bit about my story. I, had my third child in 2023, and I kind of always knew that there was something more out there. And then I always knew I never wanted to be tied to corporate America. I always knew that. And I worked for a vet, and he kind of like talked me out of not being a vet from the standpoint of, owning your own practice, you have other expenses, like Brian kind of alluded to before. Do we, have inventory? Do we have to have a lot of equipment? Whatever that may look like. And I was like, yeah, that's not for me. And so when I got started, actually, I just had our third child, and he kind of changed everything for me. It was the first maternity leave that I didn't do an ounce of work on. When I had the girls, I took 2-ish weeks off, and then I worked from home. And so it wasn't really true bonding. And so when I took a step back from the bank and truly was off for my maternity leave, I was like, oh my gosh, I am so stressed. Like, I didn't realize how much I was carrying. Like, I was working crazy hours. And I was like, how are we going to do this with 3 kids? There's just no way. Something had to give. And that was when I took the leap of faith. I did a bunch of research. I have 2 aunts that are virtual assistants, actually. So I kind of knew it was a thing, but I didn't really what do they even do? I don't know. I had no idea. And so it was a lot of learning for me. And I took the leap of faith. I met with my business coach, and I was like, okay, you can really build whatever you want it to be as a virtual assistant. And so I definitely started there. And as I mentioned before, I was working a 9 to 5 as I built my business because we needed that financial gap. We moved in the process, so I didn't have a year really to prepare like I anticipated. So it was always the plan that I was going to start my business. Not what I did, but we moved, and I was like, I'm not going back to the bank. I'm all bets are on me. So that's when I started my business, and I quickly grew, which is probably an anomaly for some. But if you put the work in and you are good at what you do, like Brian said, you can do it faster than a year. And that was me. I quit my 9 to 5 in 10 months. And by a year, I was making almost $10,000 months, which is crazy amazing. And so like, why do people hire you as a virtual assistant, and why should you hire a virtual assistant? And I guess, Brian, what made you take that leap. I know you read Buy Back Your Time, and what made you reach out and start that process?
Yeah, my journey with getting help is a long one because I mean, I grew up Midwestern where you kind of take pride in doing things yourself
Mhm.
and making things happen. Then I joined a firm, a consulting firm that also kind of valued getting your hands dirty and working in the details and as well as like at the high levels of an organization. And so the thought of, and I had read books about you should be spending your time on the most valuable thing. And that was the first thought. I'm like, okay, that I understand that concept that makes sense to me. And then yes, you're right. The book, Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time, laid out a clear way of how to actually implement, bringing a virtual assistant into your business. And that really did change things for me. I guess I always had this fear like that, the person I hire was not going to do it as good as I could do it. That was like a thought that I had, but then I'm like, well, that just means that I don't have the right person, right? And so I kind of made up my mind that I was going to try it out until it worked. Fortunately, I didn't have to try very long because you did a great job. And also, sometimes I realized too that sometimes things don't have to be as good as you would do them because you're either, you could better put your efforts somewhere else, that's more valuable. And I'm just thinking about our listeners who are thinking about how to work with a VA. You've now worked with many different clients. I think if I can say some great relationships, some more difficult. You probably have an interesting perspective that you can share with the listener who might hire VA services in terms of like what they should be looking for, what you look for. Like how basically it's this again, it's back to the title. The VA is not just someone you ask to do things. It is, you are a partner. You're a partner for me. So like what can you say to that? What advice can you give to the listeners related to that?
Yeah, I think that's important. Like you said, is like finding the right person because everyone's needs are so different. And I have worked in several different industries, and you have to find somebody who is invested in your business to some degree, to have that true partnership. Because if they're just an order taker and a task taker, one of the things that we'll get to is what can they really do? And then also, whoever you have on your team is going to bring a different perspective. Like so many of us want to be just the solopreneur. And when we can have somebody who we can bounce ideas off of, even if it's just one other person, like you mentioned before, I also highly suggest having a business coach because between them and having just one person in support is going to be able to completely change how you look at your business because you have different perspectives. For me, it was when I decided to hire somebody for my team, it was, I have all these clients. What can I start offboarding client work wise that doesn't require my expertise and also alleviates the time where I can still show up just like that I'm allowing my clients to show up in a space of their expertise.
Mhm.
So like why you should hire an assistant and time flies. I mean, obviously we all know that. That's like the foundation of this and like how can you reclaim your time and pass off those things that don't require your expertise. I would say 90% of business owners as they're starting to scale are or maybe even more than 90%. We get caught in that day-to-day task. We get caught in the admin stuff. We are our own worst bosses to a degree. And so having a VA really lets you take a step back and offboard those things and you can step into your zone of genius. And then you also, from a business standpoint, you get to, you don't have to worry about payroll. There are subcontractor. You don't have to worry about filling somebody's 40 hours a week. 90% of them are going to have like one or two clients, sometimes more than that, depending on what their capacity is and also what the needs are for their other clients, so that they can build that lifestyle business that they are craving as well, right? So what can they really do? It can be as basic as inbox management. Like
Is that a good
literally
place to start?
I
What
would
would
say
you,
so.
yeah.
So yeah, I think inbox management is a great place to start and even calendar management. I think we are the worst at scheduling to the version of us that we think, our ideal version is. We have all this energy, we have all the capacity. We can say yes, yes, yes. And really, when it comes down to it, then we overbook ourselves. And if you can have somebody, I call them the keeper, like the gatekeeper.
Uh-huh.
And, if you can have somebody in that space where they really are mindful and they can see more than just, I have 3 meetings today, I can take on something else. But the reality is you have 3 meetings today, but you also have a big project due Thursday. Making sure that they keep that space and know I only take prospect calls on Tuesdays, Thursdays at whatever time so that we stay honest to ourselves so that you don't overbook yourself. And the
And
inbox management is so easy.
if you're if you're looking at your VA as your partner, the VA is bringing forward these ideas of only
Mhm,
hosting prospect calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays and doing
mhm,
your deep work on Fridays because, that's when you protect the time.
mhm.
If you look, if as a client of a VA, if you are just looking at them as taking tasks, then you don't have the opportunity to have your VA add a bunch of additional value for you.
Exactly. And I think that when I look at the people that I work for, when I started as a VA and then also quickly turned into the project management and now fractional COO space. And yes, I still do some VA stuff depending on the client, but being able to, like you said, add value to that space and keep it top of mind so that so many of my people are thought leaders of some sort and like they need that creative space. And for that is my number one job is to protect their space so that they can come up with a $5 million idea or, whatever it may be, like
Yep.
write your book and be able to still run your business. And some other things they can do is like scheduling your social media stuff. I read a statistic and it was kind of driven towards AI. However, it's true in this situation too. You can do 10% of the task, pass it over, let them do 80%, and then you put your final touches on. I mean, and really, when you have the structure and the foundation, you can pass pretty much anything off. And to your point that you mentioned before, like it might not be the exact way you did it. And that's okay because there's different ways to do anything. And then you can put your final touches on it. For me, anyway, like it could take a long time to sit down and write my own content. And if I can be like, here's the ideas, get me started, and then go in and put my final touches, that saves me 20 hours a week alone. And so being able to pass some of those things off and again, them keeping in mind your natural capacity. And then it also bridges the gap. So when you're at your lower capacity, then it keeps your client relationships level, right? Because they're bridging those gaps and it's not like the ebbs and flows and it's just more consistent. And also it's another layer to that customer service thing that you mentioned last week or the week before is that we are in customer service. And when you have a backup person who can help you maintain those relationships, I mean, that's huge.
The idea of being comfortable hiring someone to do some of the work for you, I think about that a lot because that was a challenge for me. I think
Mhm,
you talked about allowing the relationship to grow. So initially, I would look at more of the stuff that you did
mhm,
until there's a comfort level, and then now you just do it. I think
mhm,
that's a key thing. I think another item too is the tools around like Loom and some of the screen recording items. If you want to make sure that your VA is doing something the way that you at least have them start doing it the way you do it, record a video of how you do it
mhm.
and let them base the standard operating procedure off that. Now, your VA may find a better way to do it, and that's great, but at least you get them started kind of off initially. And then also the third thing that I was just thinking about is, and I can't think of an example right now, but there's probably one thing you're like, oh, Brian's really particular about that thing, like whatever it
Mhm,
happens to be. Like, just be super transparent about it as I try to be so that there's no confusion or
mhm.
surprises or anything like that. And everyone has their own thing and it is what it is. And we just have to know about it, right? Instead of
Yeah.
like being surprised by it.
Yeah, I think that's, like, super important too, and, like, you have to have a comfort level of when you're hiring that, that you can have those conversations too, and that you're not gonna be afraid to tell somebody,
Right.
like, "Hey, I don't like it this way." So you have to have that comfort level and that trust between both of you, and that's what's made such great relationships for the clients that I have and that I've grown with. And you start out reviewing things a little bit more and there's time and training. It's no different than if you're in corporate. Like you don't just hire somebody
Right.
and they automatically know like the systems and processes and whatever. And even if people have the same platforms, you mentioned Loom and things like that, everyone uses them so differently. And having A, that awareness, and B, I think a loom is honestly, I do 90% of my stuff with looms now because it is easy. Like they can go back and watch it. I think even within Loom now, you can like draft an SOP based on the
Mm.
whatever. The technology is there and it's so easy for like the adaptability. And if you have somebody who's coachable, like again, going back to that first, like doing your research and building that trust, because they can be so important in your business. You'd build that strategy piece together. And if you have somebody who works with other clients as well, then they can bring a different perspective and say, hey, we're missing a piece here. You know, like if it's building out a sales funnel or whatever, which was something I didn't have a clue about a sales funnel. I mean, people have sales processes, but you don't really understand the online sales
Right.
process when you're first starting out as a VA sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. And so just like being aware and mindful of everything, but that true partnership is honestly what I've been like the most passionate about and really have been able to grow with all of you. I mean, you wouldn't have trusted me to do a podcast with you had I not been able to grow.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the fun part. And you get to go back and see where we were, gosh, only a year and a half ago.
Some other lessons that I've learned is one, actually, first is not a lesson, it's a unintended benefit, is that having a VA keeps me on task. So if I know that you need to do something by a certain date, now I have a deadline that if I didn't have you, I wouldn't have, and then that thing wouldn't have gotten done. Again, back to like, if you have a VA and a coach, those are two people that kind of hold you accountable, which is really important when you're a lone entrepreneur. It's easy to get sidetracked. The other lesson though that I learned is don't expect that you can do a ton of things, but don't expect that your VA can do everything for you.
Mhm.
So like, we struggled with some website development, for example.
Mhm.
And, there comes a time when you need to hire someone that does websites as their main
Mhm.
thing, and now you could keep it up to date easily and with
Mhm.
no challenge. But like, consider that as you're working with the VA. And again, if the VA is your partner, they're saying, you know what, this is probably not a thing for me. This is a thing for something else, somebody
Yeah,
else.
and having that, again, open conversation and, like, relationship where, for me, I can do a lot of things, and also I know tech-wise, that's not my strength, and that's okay. We can have that conversation as I'm interviewing people. It's really getting to that need, and it goes back to your five-step process, right? Like,
Mhm.
we in that discovery period before you make that invitation, do I truly have the service to serve you, or do they have the service to serve me? And being honest and open about that is honestly the best thing. And so what some other benefits are being able to, have somebody, especially as you're growing, so that you're not burning out. I think that that's where 90% of us, you're like, okay, I'm at my capacity, I just need to offboard a few things. And there's an easy way to do that. Like, there's an easy way. I think even Brian, you talk about this in the book, and correct me if I'm wrong, but going through the tasks, actually, I think it's around the no budget. But it's similar with your tasks, like going through, like, can I cut this? Like, do I need to be doing this? Somebody else be doing this? Like, I mean, I can respond to emails for you and they don't require your expertise. If it's a technical question, yes, maybe I draft
Uh-huh.
it and say, hey, can you take a peek at this? But 90% of the time, I can handle it. Like, jump in and out and do all your scheduling and things like that. And so just being like real honest, like I went through as I was looking to expand my team, including client tasks. What can I offboard that don't require my expertise? Maybe it's uploading a newsletter. And so my assistant has access to your platform. However, the caveat is I still have to go in and make sure that it's right because at the end of the day, it's on me regardless of who did what. And so just making sure, that we're all out of the day-to-day weeds and being able to be in your zone of genius. And then also when you have that support, you can work seasonally. Like Brian mentioned in the last episode. I mean, how easy would it be for you to take off a whole summer, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you can try to chunk your work and not, but it's never going to be perfect. There's always
Right.
something that's going to need to be monitored. And when you have someone like you to support that, it allows.
Yeah. And even again, you don't have to have a big team, just having one other person bridges that gap for you. And then the other thing that I think is important about having a VA, at least for me, was that we get to model our real leadership and we can delegate instead of doing the things ourselves. A prime example was the summit that we did, a few weeks ago. I got to see on the other side of like the project management and whatever. So now I have a feeling of what you as my client goes through.
Uh-huh.
And the just a different perspective, right? I've been behind the scenes, I can project manage, I can do all of those things. And also now being on this other side where it was my summit and not like your summit, I see what you guys expect and also like where gaps are and where you can continue to grow.
You asked me to be part of the summit, and I eagerly signed up because of another benefit of working with you, who's also working with other coaches, is that it's a networking opportunity. You
Mhm.
as someone that I pay to do work for me is able to connect me with other like-minded people. So what another advantage of having a VA. So when is, I have my thoughts too, but I'm kind of curious what you think. When is the right time to hire a VA?
Yeah. So I think the right time is when you're in that hustle culture. You start working too many nights, you're working the weekends, you're not in that time freedom space. The tasks that you have are starting to pile up. You know what needs to be done, but your bandwidth may not completely be in alignment. And sometimes for me, even if it's project based, hire somebody from Fiverr if you're not quite ready for that space. And then the other thing that was huge for me, especially raising a family, was when I started feeling guilty that I was spending time with the kids. But then when I was also working, like I felt bad that I like wasn't spending time
Wasn't
with the
with the
kids.
kids.
Yeah, like there was this weird space, and I think I felt it more over the summer when the kids were home and all three of them, and they went to the babysitter a couple days, but primarily they were home. And it was this weird internal pull of like, I should be working, but I should be present with the kids, and everyone will find their own. I'm not going to say balance because there's no balance, like it's never equal, but you'll find your own harmony, I guess I'd say, in that space. And yeah, there was nights that I was working, but also I realized, okay, I can still be making money and my assistant could be doing some of this stuff. And again, going back to like the time audit. So when your hope, I guess, is to continue to grow, start doing a time tracking. That's the first thing that I have my clients start doing too is, go through and see where I call it a energy audit.
Hmm.
Where are the things that are, I really hate doing this. Like, I don't want to do it. And for me, it was inbox management for my own inbox. Like, I don't want to look at my email. Somebody else can go in, clear out all the newsletters because we all know we have 9 million of them that we get every single day. And even in my clients' inboxes, they can go in, clear out that stuff, and then I can see what's really important and kind of delegate from there. So I know you mentioned you had your own times.
Yeah. I mean, the easy answer is when, you're barely surviving and you just need some help. But I
Mhm.
don't actually even think that's the perfect answer. I think even then you could have the wrong expectations. Like, you could be like, save me. And then, oh, you're not saving me. This didn't work. Right. I
Mhm.
think that the right time to hire a VA is when you are in the right mindset, that you know that a VA could give you something that would help you do better, help them do better, and that
Mhm.
you're willing to take the time to invest the time with that VA to make sure that it's the right fit, that the right things are being done, and there's a true partnership there. And I wasn't there for a long time because I still had that, I could do it better, or it's just I'm gonna spend all this time and then they're gonna leave me and it's gonna be a waste. And only eventually did I hit the point where I'm like, okay, it is time and I'm ready to commit to this. And that's why it's been successful. I think
Mhm.
if I would have had someone help me any earlier, I don't think it would have been successful because I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, and you do have to do some self-reflection. I think that's important of knowing kind of where you're at to be able to be in that space of delegating and
And do it. If you're worried about it being
Mhm.
done slower, do it, but do it and record it,
Yes.
right? Record it. And then if you're like, "Oh, I'm just going to do it again, record it again. That way you have two
Mhm.
videos that you can show to see some sort of variation on whatever you need done. And then
Mhm.
Yeah, is if your VA is good, they'll take those videos and then they'll be able to do it way faster than you eventually. Like the ability to screen record, I think, is revolutionary in terms of
Mhm.
very quickly being able to educate something on something.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
Good. As we wrap up here, is there any key thing that the listener should think about when they think about hiring a VA as their partner?
Don't
So,
rush into it. Yeah.
that's good. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, I would say don't rush into it. Do your due diligence. I know, Brian, you did research around, like, hiring me, obviously, around the platform you found me, and everything. I would say, and just being open to that different perspective, because that truly, if you're closed minded, I mean, the partnership will never work either. And knowing, like, it's okay, you're going to probably make mistakes, they're going to make mistakes, and nobody's going to die.
Exactly. I like it. Well, this wraps up several episodes we've now had around the lifestyle business and entrepreneurship. Next week, we are going to have our first of 2 episodes that are more aligned on the time freedom formula component that's called lifestyle expenses. So next week, we're going to talk about, there's millions of books on how to spend better, and there's thousands of tactics. I've rolled all those up into 10 spending principles that are the ones that you should think about if you want to make sure that you're spending in line with your identity and in line with your values. So that's what is up for next week. Until then, please leave us an honest review, like and subscribe on YouTube. And thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor to have you listening, and we'll see you next week.